Hey.
Hey Adam, how are you?
Good. Good. How are you?
Fine. Almost ready. In a week from now, I will have also a little girl. So.
Oh, congrats! Congrats! And yeah, sleepless nights starts now.
So yeah, I'm ready for a few months of getting back to no sleep. Let's see. So yeah, I'm trying to wrap up things now so that
Good.
and hopefully she won't come earlier because I need a molecular COVID test in order to be able to get in the hospital. So I'm going to do one on Monday so that I'm ready for Wednesday. But if for whatever reason she decides to get out during the weekend, I won't be able to get in because I will have to. So hopefully she will wait for 7 days. How are things for you?
Yeah, you don't have vaccine there yet in Greece?
We have, and I'm going to get my second shot tomorrow, but because it won't be 14 days before, before 14 days pass, you have to also do a molecular test in order to be able to get in the hospital. So yeah, tomorrow my second shot, and then 7 days a little girl.
Nice.
Hey, Tong.
Hey.
So Dylan is out today. Should we wait for 1 more minute for Camille?
I guess.
Yeah.
Nothing really much to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So Chan's here Fabian's late. Yeah.
Fabian will be out. He's traveling to the US. I don't know if he is out today. So I'm not sure. I think that he will be out tomorrow for sure, but I don't know if he's out today. So maybe he's out also.
Oh no, he mentioned in Slack. He said he'll be late. So.
Oh, okay.
So maybe tomorrow he's traveling.
Yeah.
How's everyone?
Oh, fine. I was telling Adam that I'm almost ready for having a girl in 7 days from now. So, a little girl. So,
Very nice.
Yeah, wrapping up things and almost there, ready for sleepless nights.
How long will you be out? 2 months?
I will be 2 months, and I will be out until school start. So because now with I have my old one, I have a son. He's 5 years old. So I will have to take care of him until school start on 14th of September. So I will be for two full months out.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Enjoy your time off with family. Okay, I think we have everyone. If Camille's connected. Hello.
Oh yeah, you're red. I'm just switching my camera like that every time the meeting finishes. I'm switching it the other way around instead of having a red mark.
Yanis, you need to buy a 3D printer to print this like this, like the cap for the camera. It's like one of the reasons to buy one.
Yeah, I will tell my wife, this is the only reason I need the printer. I just want to print that.
Yes, like you need to spend $500 on the privacy feature for your camera.
Yeah, but if I need one every day, it will make its money. So yeah, I think that it's a good thing.
I'm not sure what you want to do with one every day, maybe different color for different day of week. I don't know.
I want to excuse my expenses. So I'm going to.
Maybe you should ask GitLab to reimburse one. It's pretty important, right?
It's super important, super important.
Does it print databases?
It will be great.
You could print like the like the 3D model of our like GitLab monolith. Maybe it would be easier like to visualize like how it works.
And have it in the background, a huge 3D schema of our database.
You can walk around it, start doing presentations. That's great.
Should we start?
Yeah. Does anyone know how to answer the first question, Kunchan? I think it makes sense. So I think we're not going to skip all of Geo and auto self-manage. Just some parts of it.
I mean, like, to be honest, like, we are not doing like a lot of self-manage at this moment.
Yeah.
Why? Because like the only thing that we are doing for the Omnibus is like exporting config, but like it doesn't really like bring self-manage closer yet.
No.
So,
And we need a config for GitLab.com.
So I'm not sure like exactly what this ask is for. Geo, I think Geo is something that we can skip, but then it's like this tricky thing, like, will it be broken in our tests? I have very little experience with Geo, so it may be hard.
Oh, there we
The
go.
other-
Speaking of Geos.
Hello.
Hey, Fabian.
Sorry, I'm late.
We are talking about geo support for Sharding.
Oh, great. So you're even talking about something that I understand. Can I help? Are there any questions?
So it's in general a discussion on whether we should support Geo or we should delay supporting Geo at the moment.
Okay. I have a high level question for regarding this, because I thought, you know, for Geo's main purpose, which is replicating the current main Postgres database, which is unsharded, Geo just relies on streaming replication. So we just replicate everything that is on the database server. If there were multiple logical databases, we would do the same thing. So if we have two database servers now, one managing all of the CI stuff, the Geo support here essentially means have another thing streaming replicate to a secondary site. And that is, I think, actually, you know, not so different from what is happening already, right? I think I'm sure there's more difficulty. The geo tracking database, I don't know what the implications are there, because we would have to track events from two different databases. I anticipate that is probably the bigger piece of work, right? To make sure that we have those events as well. But that's sort of my high-level view.
Yeah, and the assumptions that geocode has about where tables are. So at the moment, I assume that, and as it is logical, the geo-tracking database and the geo events and everything related to geo are, the code assumes that they will find everything everywhere. So there is, I think that CI job artifacts are tracked. So the code assumes that CI job artifacts will be found on the main database. So I would assume that there will be a requirement for the geo team to add a significant amount of updates there.
Yeah, so I think, so my suggestion here would be to just connect with Douglas, but Douglas is going to be on parental leave relatively soon as well. So maybe Nick to understand what needs to be done. I see Camille said we are doing only essential things for self-managed. Geo, not sure. I think the important thing here to realize is that I think 80% of our largest customers run Geo. And so the people that would maybe even consider thinking about sharding are also using Geo, right? So I think that is something we would have to support. Otherwise, I think people would be, annoyed about it.
Yes, but like my comment refers to like what we are doing now. It doesn't refer to what we have to do in the future. And like in the future, I think it's like we want to ensure that like self-managed run as closely as possible to how we run GitLab.com. This is like the goal. Just right now, we may like dismiss some of these problems by choosing, let's say, much less friction path. And about the geo, I'm not sure about the geo because like I think it's at this moment it's pretty essential to focus on POC and getting this green because it's gonna show us like things that would be broken. And job artifact registry is definitely one of the things. But also Geo has like very like unique way how it manages data databases, how it tracks. So we may actually then, as soon as we have POC with just Geo broken, maybe ask Geo team to take a look at that because
I think
POC gonna probably be the closest resemblance how we want like this to work on right now. Maybe it's not the end story, but how we want this to work right now. So this could be, I guess, my suggestion about when to engage.
Yeah, I think my preference is also that, if we know, like if we are in a good state of knowing how Geo is breaking, we can engage the team of, more in detail to make sure that it works on that. Do we have any idea on timelines regarding this? As in, when would it make sense for Geo to become more engaged?
I'm assuming that like the POC, we probably like streamline, I don't know, in 2 or 3 weeks from now. So probably after that time, they would like start looking at helping us fixing the broken test for the Geo.
Okay, but that's helpful because that means I can speak to the Geo team and say essentially in 14.2, a portion of their development time needs to be spent on this.
So like I guess like the thing is like we'll not be ready yet to accept changes on master, but we will be hopefully ready to ask them to assess what needs to be changed, and maybe start POCing these changes with the anticipation that they will contribute these changes once we are ready. That's really my perspective because like I think there is like the like pretty particular order of actions that we need to do on decomposing POC, and Geo is pretty far in this list.
Geo is pretty far in.
Like it's pretty late in the like decomposing POC into master.
Yeah.
it's not gonna be immediate.
Okay, thank you. That helps me. I'll make sure to just talk to Nick and make sure that we account for that.
Okay, guess that's point one from Chan. Point two from Chan. Was anyone in the working group meeting that can expand on that?
Yeah.
Yes, I was. There is still like some misalignment on like what we are doing, because like it did pop up that like we do normalization of the match request data with the Yorick work, kind of dropping 500 gigs of data, but Sid asked us if whatever Yorick is doing gonna prevent sharding of the data later. And our answer is no, but there is like some, I guess this sentence about the sharding pop up in the context of the decomposition that we are doing, kind of raise some questions on like ensuring that Sid and like we are all aligned on exactly what we are doing, because it kind of raised the concern that whether Sid is still thinking that we are actually right now doing sharding instead of the composition, and like whatever we deliver is actually like the sharding solution, which is not. So as for the piece of the debloating and match request, I think it got clarified in the VG database scalability working group channel that in any model, it's actually like having table that is like 1 gig of data instead of 500 gig of data is simply better, even if it's normalized. And like it doesn't like it doesn't really like cause a harm into delivering sharding solution later. That's really like I think like the summary from Yorick and Craig that got delivered to Eric, but we actually now also actively working on ensuring that this is clear about what is being done and what is like the benefits and how it affects the future steps, because sharding is not really like our focus right now. It may become like in 1 year from now, but not really at this moment. We are now doing the composition. So this was something that kind of raised this question, like are we actually sure that like all levels don't understand what we are doing?
I agree with Camille, and I think that our top priority, together with the composition, should be for everything else to bring everything below 100 gigabytes or even lower. So once we have all tables small and agile, and we are able to do migrations, and we're able to everything will be way better. And then we can start thinking if we need sharding for those tables in the composition.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm kind of also thinking that like I'm kind of trying to reinforce that like what we kind of investigated initially for the sharding solutions kind of imply like only like a very specific ways how we could do it for the application that we are doing, because it was big, it was holistic. It's not something that we can like disconnect easily. Like our perspective on the sharding is actually going to shift when we start looking on the smaller subset. We have actually like much more different ways, maybe more efficient, easier to execute. If we look, for example, at the composing only CI tables, sharding the CI tables. So I'm kind of like, what I saw that Craig and Eric started doing is like, they started like describing exactly how it may look after the composition. But in general, it's like that we actually have the more ways and more iterative and much easier to execute and much more scalable after the composition. But I think it's something that kind of pop up as a potential unclear if it's actually clear that this is something that opens us like more paths. But it also means that we are not delivering sharding right now. We are delivering the composition. This is really like our focus. But these are the paths moving forward after we do it. That's the kind of like.
I agree.
If you're trying to
and that was a specific question about horizontal sharding, not vertical or decomposition. So, for example, in this case, if we do vertical sharding, decomposition, or with respect to sharding, the solution is easy because this table would go together with the table it was spawned off. So there are two tables or one table that is the result of normalizing the table. As long as we do the composition with respect to sharding, it will go together with the other table. So with respect to vertical sharding, this is not a problem. With respect to horizontal, there is a discussion, but we have agreed that this is a future step either way, and we will have to think about it.
Yeah, I think I understood this. So I do agree with what Camille said. We need to be clear on what we're doing. But I think the question is also, if we were at some point in the future to do horizontal application level sharding, would this change make that impossible? And I think the answer to this is no. And so I think this should be also enough, because even if we were to go down that future path, we would still be able to figure it out. And I think this should be good enough, because
yeah, we have a relational database. We cannot remove all normalization. So it will be great if we have a fully denormalized database. For sure, it will be easier at some point to do horizontal sharding. But because we have a relation and we have to live with a relational database, we have to live with normalization. There is no way we cannot do normalization. So this is a problem that either way we have to address at some point.
I'm kind of thinking that like really like in the whether like how you do sharding, you should be looking at the cardinality of the data set. Just some data sets have very low cardinality, and right now like doing, let's say, replicating this data set many times with like index for the particular, let's say, project ID, it's not really like sometimes efficient. And I think like what Yorick is doing with this normalization of the emails is actually like the data set that doesn't have very high cardinality, and will not really have high cardinality. And like it's something that is pretty great to the partition as well. So I'm kind of like thinking that like when you do sharding, you need to look at the type of the data that you are sharding. Just some type of the data have very high cardinality, very random access pattern, like a lot of maybe like something that's simply, I don't know, time decays, or like it's very specific for the project, and this is where like it makes sense. But like, I mean, in this particular case, I think what we are doing is actually like the same thing to do, because you are very rarely going to add to this table. You're gonna be mostly reading from this table. And now if you follow the different pattern of the merge request push, you're actually like each time gonna be writing a lot of data on like creating this application. So on that sense, I think like it doesn't like break any other future work. That's really my perception. And I'm also like Fabian, not sure like if we do application level sharding. I'm kind of more like right now convinced in the composed world that we just do partitioning and sharding on top of it.
No, I'm not saying we should.
As something more reasonable, like to do and easier to execute. So
we may have to do it at some point. So, but this is not the way. So we have seen also what Vitesse does and what Citus does. That the important part and what they care about a lot is not only sharding horizontally and moving things around in servers. Is also all those small entities like this specific one that Yorick has added, having the infrastructure to replicate that entity in a lot of servers and keep them in sync. That will be a part of our solution either way, either by using one of those tools or building it on our own. So all those small support entities like the one that keeps track of the emails and names of authors and committers. This is a perfect candidate for something that you replicate all around the shards, if you have to do that at some point in the future.
Yeah, but I think we can move on, because I think essentially the summary is the future is uncertain, but even in that uncertain future, if we were to choose the path you're thinking about, this is not a blocker. So I think that's fine.
Yep.
Okay, the next question from Chun is, can we fan out work to other teams already and give them an early heads up? My question was, do we already have enough information for this? The answer is no.
No.
I think just putting this together, I think we definitely know about distribution already, right? Provisioning Omnibus DB, right? That's a thing. We know about Geo and supporting this. Do we know anything else that we can fan out at this point? I don't think so.
I think I would have to look at the POC, because POC shows like a bunch of the things, but I think it's not like very like clear list of how things should be fixed yet.
Hmm. There's backup restore as well, but don't know what is going to be backed up and restored yet.
This is broken. I think like what you Adam started working active record base, it's something that we need to also look at how it's being used, which is like all these Robocop rules, and like I don't know, like moving away from this pattern. Because at least in the POC, I know that I had to fix a bunch of the places where you use .connection on active record base. We're gonna have to figure out migrations, how to execute. And this is kind of rightly related to the next point of view, Tong. But the truth is like there is like a lot of these small things to figure out how to do. And maybe what makes sense right now is like, I think that like one thing that is kind of clear to me that, and I'm happy of that, because that we should definitely create a GitLab CI schema. This is something that I think that we kind of get to the consensus that is something that we need, and it's gonna help us a lot. So maybe if this is like the direction, so maybe we kind of proceed the schema path, but kind of continue working on the POC to get it green and kind of start creating issues and finding out things out of the POC, because then we're gonna know exactly things that we need to fix. And there's all this load balancing stuff to work on, but it's something that I discussed with Yorick, so I'm not sure like what is the status of that.
Shall we move on to the next question, number 4? So I understand Camille has said there's a lot of small questions, but for me, there's 2 big questions that has been asked. This is swirling around from the discussion from Andreas and etc. The first one is, we have 2 databases, we have the main and the CI databases. There's 2 proposals here. Do we want minimal schema in CI database, or do we want exact same schema in main and CI? Camille has a lot of. Camille?
I think like I kind of like see the Andrea's point right now, that it may be simpler to do like the joint schema, but I kind of feel that like long time it creates a chaos because like you kind of then populate a lot of tables that you are not using. And for example, one of the things that I'm kind of seeing the problem is like if you have two databases and you're gonna have to run some migrations like in both of them. And for example, one of the problems that I'm seeing, like if you populate all the schemas, is that like you're gonna be using part of the public schema in the current model. So like in the current, like at least today, we're gonna be using schema migrations out of the public. So it kind of creates you a chaos that you don't know really, and that if you are configuring this database, you are not really sure if you need all of these things out of the public. So the tricky part in this model is like that it actually has its drawbacks, because you kind of using GitLab CI mostly on another database, but you're also kind of using a little of the public. And it's maybe sometimes hard to discover that you're using parts of the public. And it's your like database is pretty inflated on the schema. Schema doesn't cost much, but it creates a chaos on like that like this duplicated structure. I'm like in the strong preference on like ensuring that like we keep these small, like well documented, but I kind of like agree that it may be a little more complex to do it today. But it kind of gives me like another perspective. If this is a little more complex and our public is a sinkhole today, and we know that some of the tables need to be used, let's say, in the main and CI database, and we know about at least of one schema migrations and maybe another one being background migrations, then I would simply propose, if this is the model, that we move them, that we create third schema, which is shared, and we move these tables in this shared schema to clearly anticipate that public is only used in the main context, but shared is something that is used by the each of these databases individually, because like schema migrations, you keep versions in the database, and it's always in the context of the given database. It's not that like you are inserting timestamps when you're running migrations on the CI into main database. Background migrations is something that we need to kind of work on and figure out what is the best model, because currently background migrations, they are being tracked only on the main. The question is like, should they be tracked on the main and kind of create a situation that like you're kind of executing, let's say, a split brain like situation that like you track, let's say, migration on the CI job artifact, which is living in another database effectively. I'm kind of thinking that maybe in this model it's better simply like to keep the locality of the data, and background migrations, if you're running that in the context of that database, the same as schema migrations, you're not gonna run add the timestamps of the CI database into main database. You kind of keep the locality, but this is something really like to figure out how to tackle. This is one aspect, and there is like another aspect. It's like how you want actually to configure database YML, because it poses its own challenges. For example, you cannot really like configure today in a very predictable way, or maybe you can, and maybe this is like the valid thing, but I don't know. But like there is like different problems associated if you configure two different connections, having migrations that point to the same logical database but different schemas. Then the question is like schema migrations table, your search path being used, and how actually migrations are being executed, because now like how it works today, you kind of proceed main and then you proceed CI. So effectively, if you have the shared migration folder, you're going to execute all migration from the main, and you're not going to execute any migrations on the CI. And then like the question is like how you actually model migrations to kind of indicate the context in which they should be running in. Probably, I don't know, in this model, you kind of need to like define as part of the migration what schema you are modifying to like limit visibility. But this is, I guess, like the problem to figure out like how to implement best. So and now like if you have two separate folders, like two separate logical databases, kind of some of these problems go away. But actually, probably we're gonna start with like the third solution, which is like we're gonna have main, and we're gonna have schema search path set to be public and GitLab CI at the same time, because this is like the safest config to run, but it kind of avoids the migration problem. But I think it's still like not ideal because it has its own set of the drawbacks. And how you manage structured SQL is like partially related to that, because it also implies like the visibility and like what data are being shared, and even if you know like what is shared and like what is required in these two different contexts, and like our cleanup later as well, because if you are not sharing, you are simply know that you can drop public schema and be done with that. But now if you use parts of the public, it's actually becoming a little more complex or like to do. So I think this question is like, we cannot really yet answer, at least from my perspective, how to do it. I think need to like work on the problems on defining like how you want to configure it, what are the drawbacks, how the migration is gonna be run in this different scenario. But I'm kind of thinking that doing shared schema may be like desirable at that moment because it may be simpler, but we need kind of probably figure out a way to ensure that you are not dependent on public, any table of the public, if you are running another logical database with the CI. So kind of not even like doing two schemas, maybe even doing three schemas to clearly indicate what is truly shared between that. So, but I'm kind of now trying like to model schemas approach on the POC, and at least as for the POC schemas, I mean, regardless if we do like separate structured SQL or not, they are great because, for example, foreign keys, I added like the spec that traverses all tables and looks at the foreign keys that cross-join schemas, and it kind of shows you that this is violating this constraint. So it kind of like improves visibility on constructs that are allowed or forbidden in that model, like usage of the schema, because it's clearly you can move whatever tables you want to, and you kind of prevent like cross schema joins. Sorry for my lengthy answer. I'm not sure if it does answer any of your questions.
I want to add something on top of what Camille says, and this what we were discussing about the problem with, for example, schema versions and some other utility tables that reside on the public schema. That's a very, very valid. Now I understand your comments in the MR also. So from that perspective, if we go with Andreas' proposal, we will have to figure out what we are going to do with those tables. So it's schema versions. There are a few utility tables that we have for tracking batch background migrations, and all those that we may want to have them somewhere. So maybe the problem there is figuring out what we're going to do with those tables. Maybe we have a utility schema, or maybe we move everything else from public outside of public for the GitLab tables, and we keep in public only those utility tables that we need in all databases. But this is technical. Other than that, I think that if we figure out that and how to be explicit in migrations about schema, so that when we're talking about the table, to be explicit that this table, to also provide a schema for that table always, if we are explicit on that front and the other one, I think that Andrea's proposal does not have a lot of other problems. But yeah, if we solve those big problems that you just mentioned, but if we solve those big problems, Andrea's proposal, it's like we can have the duplicate schema, but we can easily drop the schema that, you know, what we call now main, all the other tables. It's like that. It's very easy to drop it or move it out of the way.
Yes, I fully agree with you. Like that, what is Andreas proposing like doesn't. It's like it has some of the problems that need to be worked on, but also it's like the problem is different. Like it's not something that you can do like in like 1 week. It's like rather a process that you need to kind of follow, and even like us leveraging schema search path is actually something that we need to take iteratively to GitLab.com. So I think like the biggest my contention point with the Andreas is like was that he asked like to do all the schema proposal right now, which actually would take us like month to do, and I don't know, whatever time. I like we have a lot of our like extensions to raise. That, for example, I'm not sure like if the schema search path works always in all cases. So
we have to make sure about that. Yeah.
So like we need to kind of roll out that iteratively, and it kind of requires modifying a lot of components. And like we can follow the proposal, but it just takes time. And like the main contention point for me was like what we have now is like good enough to us iterate on that, because like it kind of gives us better perspective how these things should be modeled and kind of unblocks all the related work that we have to do. For example, main keyword, it kind of uncovered another set of the problems that we need to fix in the application. It's something that like us merging that actually allowed us to now get Tonk MR on the GitLab development kit and mine on the GCK. And like we kind of started actually to move forward with that. So I think like my whole sentiment is like, I think each of these approaches makes a lot of sense. Each of them has its own drawbacks. Each of them needs like to be like iterated, and we need to kind of like do it, adding small pieces step by step to the production to see that we don't break. Because like schemas here, search path, like for me, like we can create schema. We need to update many places to with database YML to leverage the schema search path. We need to actually validate that actually the schema search path is properly used in all of these cases to ensure that it's actually not broken. I have limited trust in our test suite that it's actually like doing the right thing. So this alone is like probably 1 or 2 weeks to do to go through all the rollouts. And now like changing how we manage our migration is like a switch in the config really, and like how it's doing that.
Can I say something here? So this is, we're talking about 2 or 3 weeks in a roadmap that will take us a year or 2 years. And what I'm seeing here and why I really like Andreas' proposal after I understood it and discussed it with him is that this also gives us a pretty nice unified way to treat omnibus, single database installations and multi-database installations at the same time without too many changes after we make sure what we are discussing. So for sure, there is this overhead in the beginning, but then it seems to me like a more unified approach that it will, I know, after we're done.
But this is one of the tracks. Like managing of the schema moving tables is one of the tracks. You actually have 5 different concurrent tracks that are happening. And now like you delaying that one track by a few weeks, you're actually delaying all other tracks as well. So it has the cascading effect. And now if we can make something simpler that just works now and iterate on that, not causing, because we are not using that yet. We are not running out of the production. It has basically like the zero like cost associated with maintaining that. So I'm kind of like you're mentioning 3 weeks. Like like if you look in the time span of 2 years, yes, but I'm kind of looking in the time span on the 6 months.
Yeah, but that's the problem.
Things.
That's the problem, in my opinion, with setting. So we may end up locking ourselves in a solution that is suboptimal because we are setting deadlines, and it's great that we're setting deadlines at the 3 months or 4 months deadlines, but we have to. I think that we should take the time to be sure that we're following the right approach, because after 2 years, not after 2 months, we won't be able to easily go back. We can always go back, but you know what I'm saying here. So what I'm saying is, let's not reject the proposal that may be the best proposal because it will delay us by 1 month. That's my opinion,
Yes,
and that's my proposal to Fabian to communicate it in general after we are sure, not today. So
yes, but like none of the proposal is rejected. It's more like
no,
we have a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things to discover to figure out what is the best proposal. There is no clear best proposal. If you would clear great proposal, we would actually have planned everything ahead of the time. But we are dealing with a lot of uncertainty how to do it. So
I agree.
So like even in the Andreas proposal, even in like what we are doing right now, there is like a lot of problems associated with that. There is like not a golden path. That's really the tricky. And the one thing that you can do with that is like those small steps, figure out like fix that, see if it's actually moving in the right direction. If it's not, like just revert and do it better. And this is exactly what I'm thinking right now we are doing. Like we are iterating, we are finding the solution.
Sorry to interrupt you, but this is going to be important for various reasons. And I haven't read this in detail, so I apologize for my superficial understanding. If we are doing what Camille proposes, does this rule out doing what Andreas proposes? It does not, right? So is the risk more that we are going to pursue a slightly different path now, and then due to time pressure, we will no longer be able to do the other thing that we know has maybe some longer term effects? Is that the risk here?
We will have to roll back for sure. So it's not like we block the other path, but we will have to.
So we can't build upon this path. We have to like roll back and then do this other thing.
Maybe not. This is I don't know. Tom and Camille can talk about that more.
I
there are some options that are not relevant to the other solutions. So the two solutions have some things that you have to do that are not required for the other solution. That's my understanding.
The truth is like that this like decision at this moment, it's so not impactful yet because we actually didn't move any like big tables yet. And I'm kind of anticipating that as soon as we start moving, we're just gonna see what makes sense and what is easier, and we're just gonna adapt to what is best and easier to do there. So like now, like going between 1 to B, when you have all the other things in place, like the, let's say, support for the schema, it's probably 1 week worth of the work on changing how you configure your configuration to what migrations to run and what file to use. So the part is really like associated with all of these actuary blocks that you need to execute for this proposal to work right now, that takes significantly longer than actual functional change that you need to perform later. I'm kind of here in particular referring to leverage of the schemas and like ensuring that this actually works properly. This is a substantial change to the application behavior, and we cannot really like push configs and ensure that things gonna work after we move like a single table. I'm kind of more anticipating that like we need to do it like step by step to ensure that nothing breaks. And like Yanis, you even like mentioned like on some of the meetings recently that we have customers self-managing their schemas. So
Yeah, we have, and
So,
we will
like-
have to be explicit. So if we
So-
go that way, but we need that even if we add multiple logical databases. So they
Yes,
self-manage.
but the fact is, like, I think we made a decision that we're gonna go with schemas anyway. What we didn't make the decision is like how we gonna manage structured SQL with this, like a small or like a big one. And this right now, it's really like a small portion of the bigger story, because it's just a matter of the configuration of your database YML effectively.
Yeah. I think that we will either way have to deal with those restrictions and be more, opinionated about the fact that we need more a higher level role, more rights on the database. I cannot see a way forward without that. But this is a small thing. So
I asked the structure question because it is for development. It is much simpler to have a smaller structure. I don't have to deal with, potentially don't have to deal with migrations, data migrations that's affecting the CI database. That's what's one thing as well. And I think it's still reversible at this point because everything's still in production. Everything's still in development, sorry. As Yannis was saying, we can just DP reset the local database and switch it back to the other one. But I don't know, because Andreas explicitly mentioned this as a goal to say that we want to keep exactly the same database schema between main and CI. But I don't think that's a goal. So if that's not a goal, then I don't know whether that affects the whole proposal or not. It doesn't look like it, but that's why I really wanted to make clear that this is not what we want in the future anyway. So that's why I asked this question.
Okay. Sorry, Yannis.
Please talk. Please say.
So I have two or three main concerns, right? And I think like these are great discussions to have. It's like my one concern that I have is we're going to lock ourselves in because of constraints, and we're going to not be able to go back, right? It sounds to me as if that is not a huge risk at the moment because of the state where we are, but we need to be mindful of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. It's still in development.
Okay, but there will be some cost if we would need to go back. I think the other question I have is, are we forcing a bad, let's say, or a suboptimal decision mainly due to time constraints? Like if we had 4 weeks more, would we do it differently? That's an honest question. Like if we have the constraints, but
with more confidence. It's not like differently, and as Camille said, and Tong and everyone, it's not like we know that this is suboptimal, the other one will not be, but we will have the time. So for example, we will have the time to also go and do a proof of concept of what Andreas is proposing, and then we will not worry that much of blocking other things, in my opinion. But yeah, maybe we can also do that either way.
Okay. Then I had a smart third question lined up that I forgot. So I'll pause here.
So can I propose something? Should we ask Andreas to join us in our next call so that he can also discuss with the team his proposal? Because I can see that there is a large discussion here about this.
Yeah. I think that may help. We are over time. I need to hop. By the way, this is just a high level check-in because this is still happening. We still are currently of the opinion that the delivery of all of this by October is an unrealistic proposal. Is that correct? Because I'm like just taking the discussion we just had, with doing it this way or that way. These are complicated things to discuss and evaluate with potential high impact, right? And so
And Fabian, they moved the target to March 2022, am I right? So the new, from what I have seen in the working groups, so the new expectations by the infrastructure team is that the problem will occur on March, not October 2021.
There are different things. So my understanding is that the saturation report on the database indicates that we will not have any problems within the next 9 months. Does not mean that after 9 months, in my view, we'll immediately have a problem. It just gives us 9 months in which we believe with relatively high confidence that there won't be a problem. It's also important as a difference. If you're going to hit a wall at that point, or if you're just leaving your confidence interval, right? And but the acceleration request is independent of that, as far as I understand. So, okay, thank you. That's that. I need to hop. So, is there anything else you need from me right now? No. Bye bye.
See you.
Bye.
Bye bye.